I want to hear your thoughts about how we rate players in CSGO, because do you think there's a too big of a focus on the HLT rating when we evaluate players in general?
Yeah, I think there is, but it's kind of cool because you know when you're talking to somebody who looks at HLTV, and you know you're talking to someone who watches the games, and you know when you're talking to someone who looks at both. And I think that's that it's nice to have HLTV. Without HLTV, we would be lost. So I want to thank them for having their website first of all. And even if their rating system is slightly flawed, there's other stats analytics platforms that have tried to purport their own rating system that improves upon HLTV's. But you know it's important that HLTV moves slowly because they are the cynosure of Counter-Strike online, and if they make too many radical changes and they miss and their ratings are just far off, well then suddenly we're all screwed. So I think it's clear that HLTV's rating could be a bit better, but I think it's fine where it is for the moment, and as long as they're thinking about making some changes. But yeah, like things like eco kills has been a big conversation this year, and I think they're looked at as one-to-one with rifle kills, which I think is just on its face incorrect.
Yeah, because every now and then when we see a player have a bad game, we often see people say replace him, he's so bad, and all that. Is that too simple-minded?
Things move fast these days. I think when, years ago when we were watching CS, you would get mad at a team for cutting a player after 6 months or even a year sometimes because you'd say, oh, you got to give them time, they got to get better. And these days, since there are so many players that have all spent all this time getting good, it feels like they slot in instantly. Bit, Monacy, all the Mouse NXT guys. I mean, there's just so many players who are having Rookie of the Year performances. Bit won his major in his first year. We've got Fame, who's a major winner this year. So I think that it's actually just more cutthroat, and people have to get used to that. And I think, in fact, the fans are just used to a meta where people make roster moves almost right away if things don't work out. And I think that's just the way it's going to be from now on.
Talking about this matter, you said that it can be a bit flawed. What attributes are not taken into consideration?
The meta of what, sorry?
Of this HLT rating and people not looking into more in-depth stats.
Oh yeah, so I think that particularly listing all kills as equal is the problem. When we look at a match and you see the difference between some players' stats versus eco rounds, some players' stats versus rifle rounds, some of it doesn't matter. I mean, there is the quote from Fur where he said, if I don't get the kills, then we're going to lose the round. And it's true that if you don't get those eco kills, you could still lose. But it's also true that some players are getting way more than they are rifle kills. And some players are really foregoing a lot of eco kills and only getting rifle kills, ending halves or ending maps 18 and 20, but still having pure impact. And then clutch frags, obviously worth more. Rounds that end up being worth 2 because of clutches are worth more. Some of this stuff isn't taken into account, and so basically all kills are not made equal.
In this sense you have just talked about, who do you think is the most underappreciated player right now?
I think I would say it's probably Frozen. Frozen, I think Magisk is another one. I think Rain is another one. These are players who I think the stats don't always even reflect how good they are. Frozen actually really did have a great year, but I think he just doesn't have a lot of attention. So in terms of how overrated or underrated he is, I think he's pretty underrated.
You yourself are also making this top 20 list on your YouTube. What are you focusing on and basing your list on?
I'm basing it on a lot of empirical evidence. The games. So I've casted the most amount of games, and I casted both majors for the first time in my career. I've watched the most demos that I ever have doing all these daily uploads on my YouTube channel. And so I just for myself have seen it a lot. And sometimes I go on HLTV and I look at stats, and without being able to go back and watch every demo, I feel like they're wrong sometimes. I look at Brokey's impact rating, I'm like, that doesn't make sense. I look at some players and I'm thinking, they weren't that good though. And then I try to think about the moments that I watched. And so my list is just my list. It's not based on all the games that I missed and everything like that. It's a mix of HLTV stats plus what I watched, and then making sure to take into account some of their deep runs and how good their teams were around them, some of the intangibles that HLTV doesn't catch.
We are around half into the list, right?
Yeah.
Do people agree with you in the comments? Are you facing some disagreement?
Everything's been pretty. Every episode, I make sure to point out that this isn't to try to predict HLTV's list, which is what it was in the first year that I did it. Now it's just my own. I think people have just been enjoying it. Like, everyone's trolling, like, "Oh, can't believe Smooya is number 14." Like, that's the comment. So I think people are having fun with it. I think actually this year probably getting the least lashback of any other year, where it's a very divisive topic. You know, is your favorite player going to be in the top 20? So I think I'm doing pretty good so far. Yeah.
Has it helped you that saying that this is your personal list and not a prediction, or trying to make it a general?
Yeah, it's kind of foolish of me to try to beat out a website that has an archive of every match played and can synthesize all the data and make the best calls on stats analysis that you could possibly ask for, and then just me, you know, who just watched some games, try to make a better list with their same metrics. So I'm trying not to step onto their court and play my own game, as players love to say. And I think that has been a much less stressful and fun route. And I always, whenever I've tried to predict or copy HLTV's list, I've always had regrets. I've always had a player that I didn't feel like should be there, but I thought the stats just proved that they should be there. So this time, none of those players are going to be there.